stripping millions more of security through his war on workers. We're seeing more layoffs than at any time since the early days of the pandemic. We are seeing manufacturing, a pillar of our economy, contracting. Now, one thing I said when I talked about Jobs Day with many of you during the Biden administration was that we can't make too much out of a single month. But the story of the last few months tells the same story about manufacturing, which is that it has contracted for 4 straight months now. And under Trump, inflation is getting worse, not better. New data shows that personal income just took its most significant monthly drop in nearly 4 years. So Americans are feeling the squeeze, both in terms of job loss and on the other side when it comes to what they have to spend to survive at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and even in the cost of things like baby gear, shoes, and wedding dresses. With July 4th around the corner, even fireworks are more expensive, all thanks to Trump's erratic and inhumane economic policies. It's no wonder that workers are bearing the brunt of the Trump administration's reckless and harmful policies, because if he was trying to destroy working people and the economy that they build and rely on, this would be the playbook. Cut federal investments that led to record job creation under President Biden, cut federal agencies that protect those workers. To add insult to injury, use those funds to further pad the pockets of his billionaire buddies, gut programs that support small manufacturers, eliminate funding for training programs that prepare American workers from all walks of life to use their full talent and to build our country, shut down job training centers that have helped millions of young people gain access to those training programs, weaken registered apprenticeship programs, which are the gold standard, find workers to blame, and push violations further underground through anti-immigrant, anti-worker immigration policies. And then cut union jobs and refuse to recognize union contracts. This is the step-by-step playbook that the Trump administration is following. And there are specific parts of the bill that sound good but aren't. Again, the Donald Trump playbook. Make things sound good, use them for applause lines, promise things that don't actually deliver anything, like the much lauded on their side cuts to taxes on overtime and on tips, which is giving crumbs to working people while making the overall pie smaller and continuing to bake a pie that is only for the rich. Jobs Day is a chance to look at the statistics, but underlying every economic statistic is an actual person, someone who's trying to make ends meet, provide for their family, and build a better future. And right now, too many of those people are in the direct line of fire of Donald Trump. And let's not forget, this didn't have to happen. Before Trump took the reins and started steering us toward a cliff, we saw incredibly strong job growth, falling unemployment, rising wages, and a renewed focus with a plan for American manufacturing. Trump loves to get a good inheritance and squander it. And that momentum that we built could have continued, but instead it's being actively reversed. We see what's happening, we know who's hurting, and we're not going to stay silent about it. It's a privilege to be here with IBEW President, General Secretary Noble, and my dear friend USW President David McCall. And I now want to introduce our chair, Ken Martin.
Thank you so much, Secretary Sue, and thank you to President McCall and Secretary Treasurer Noble for joining us today. Look, right now as we speak, Leader Hakeem Jeffries is holding the floor of the House. He has been speaking for more than 7 hours now to make sure that the American people know exactly what Trump and his Republicans are trying to take from them. This bill, by the way, is the largest cut to health care in American history. It closes 1 in 4 nursing homes, and thousands more will need to slash staff. It puts 300 rural hospitals at risk of closing, and it kicks 5 million plus people off of food assistance. And of course, as you'll hear about in a moment, it kills millions of jobs throughout this country. And the kicker? They tried to do all of this in the dead of night. They tried their hardest to get this done while the American people were sleeping, and Democrats weren't going to let that slide. No transparency, no shame, just another massive handout to billionaires, to people who already have so much in our society. But through their own incompetence and Democrats fighting back tooth and nail, they have to do it in broad daylight. We won't let them get away with this. We're going to make sure that every American knows exactly who sold them out and who's fighting to stop it. And look, Trump's attacks on working families doesn't start and end with this disastrous bill. We are watching the direct consequences of Donald Trump's reckless economic agenda unfold in real time. Layoffs are up, job creation is slowing, working families across the country are feeling the strain in their wallets at the checkout line and throughout their communities. This is a result of deliberate choices that prioritize billionaires over literally everyone else. Donald Trump's latest budget bill isn't just bad policy, it's an assault on working people who keep this country running. And I say that not just as a chair of the DNC, I say that as a proud carrying union member and the son of a single mom who raised 4 kids by the time she was 20. We grew up in and out of shelters. We knew the kind of fear that comes with poverty. We also knew how essential programs like Medicaid and food assistance were to surviving, and still are to millions of Americans. Those programs helped put a roof over my head, food on the table, and they gave me a shot at an education, frankly, a shot at a future. Now Donald Trump wants to rip those lifelines away from families just like mine. His budget bill would cut Medicaid and SNAP so deeply that economists project it will eliminate more than 1 million jobs. Think about that. 1.2 million jobs gone, wiped off the map, and that's just from gutting programs that serve the most vulnerable. His cuts to construction and clean energy investments are even more staggering. We're talking about millions of good-paying jobs at risk, from factories to work sites to communities that finally started to see investment and growth. Entire industries could be hollowed out because Trump wants to pull funding from the very programs that create jobs and keep supply chains right here at home. And let's talk about healthcare. This budget threatens over 300 rural hospitals with closures. It would force thousands of nursing homes to shut down or lay off workers. Now, that's not some abstract policy consequence. That's your parents' hospital closing. That's your grandparent losing the roof over their head and the care they require to live comfortably and freely. All of this, again, so Donald Trump can give tax breaks to the richest Americans. His big, ugly betrayal is a reverse Robin Hood, stealing from the working class to hand over $1 trillion to billionaires. Over the next decade, it would add more than $4 trillion to the national debt, shrink GDP, and drag down wages. And the kicker, the bottom 40% of earners will lose money under this bill, while the top 10%, the very people who need help the least, will line their pockets with thousands more. But let me be clear, this fight isn't over. Democrats will continue to roll up our sleeves as part of an organizing summer, speak out, and stand shoulder to shoulder with working families across the country. We believe that dignity, security, and opportunity aren't privileges, they're rights, and we will never stop fighting to make that true for everyone. So thank you for your time, and at this point, I'm going to pass it over to my friend, IBEW Secretary Treasurer Paul Noble. Take it away, Paul.
Thank you, Chair Martin, Secretary Sue, and President McCall. Let's call this bill what it is, a direct attack on working families. Donald Trump and congressional Republicans are moving a budget bill that sells out the very people who power this country. It shovels billions in tax breaks to the rich, slashes critical investments in infrastructure, and leaves working Americans holding the bag. This bill doesn't just miss the mark, it goes in completely the wrong direction. We should be doubling down on infrastructure, energy independence, and job creation right here at home. Instead, this bill guts investments that our communities rely on. The very projects that keep IBEW members on job sites, build our electrical grid, and put food on the table for millions of working families. What are we giving up? Millions of good-paying construction jobs, billions of work hours, hundreds of billions in wages and economic activity that would otherwise flow straight into the American middle class. All of it gone. And what do we get in return? Handouts for billionaires, cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. It'll rip healthcare away from 17 million people and put 5 million at risk of going hungry. We get a plan that kills energy projects, spikes household energy bills, and sends more of our manufacturing overseas. These cuts are hitting rural communities and small towns the hardest, places that have already been left behind far too long. Trump and Republicans are asking working people to sacrifice everything, our jobs, our health care, and our communities, so the wealthiest corporations and individuals can pocket more money. It's backwards, it's immoral, and it's something the IBEW will never stand for. That's why we wholeheartedly oppose this bill. We didn't spend the past decade fighting to invest in our energy grid, launch clean energy projects, and build back American industry, just to watch Republicans rip it all down to give tax breaks for billionaires. We fought for that progress, and we're not going to let it be undone. American working families deserve better. So here's what I have to say to Congress. Kill this bill. Because if you vote to take the jobs and health care away from the very people who elected you, don't expect to come back to Washington. The IBEW is watching. Our members are watching. And come November, the American people will remember exactly who stood with them and who sold them out. So thank you guys, and let's keep fighting. I will now pass it to my union brother and United Steelworkers President, David McCall.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Noble. Thank you for your friendship and your leadership. Chairman Martin, also thank you for your leadership, and Secretary Sue, it's great to see you again, and thank you for your decades for fighting for a just and fair society in America. You know, the United Steelworkers, we're also known as IBEW, stands for Unity and Strength for Workers. But this budget bill does exactly the opposite. It foregoes unity, and it certainly does nothing to strengthen the American worker. This bill threatens the unraveling of progress, not just for USW members, but for every worker who counts on a good job, quality health care, and an opportunity for a better life. Not just for us, but for our kids. Our members in steel, aluminum, and advanced manufacturing, this bill is a huge step backwards. And it comes at a time when we should be building up on that momentum. By walking back clean energy investments, tax credits, and grant funding from the Inflation Reduction Act, this bill puts the future of domestic manufacturing at risk. Our workers are ready to embrace new plants, expand production, and enter the next generation of union workers. And it also eliminates more than 3 billion hours of building and construction industry jobs. And it's just not manufacturing and construction sector. The cuts to Medicaid in this budget are dangerous. They put the health of our families at risk. And they directly threaten the jobs of thousands of USW members who work in healthcare. All across this country, they work in healthcare. And as this bill becomes law, more than 300 rural hospitals could be forced to shut their doors. The bill isn't about balancing budgets or helping workers. It's about giving massive tax handouts to the wealthiest few at the expense of everyone else. While corporate CEOs and billionaires get $3 trillion in permanent tax breaks, working families are offered nothing but crumbs. Temporary clinics like tax-free overtime, and no tax on tips, which sounds nice, but expire in 3 years. And there's a 177% difference between tax cuts that benefit the wealthy and tax cuts that benefit workers. Instead of incentivizing job creation, building the tax base in our communities with good paying union jobs, and paying down the national debt, this bill does nothing but exactly the opposite. We'll see through this. So does the IBEW across this country. We're united because we know who's really paying the price. The folks clocking in the steel mills, paper mills, entire plants, and oil refineries. But this is pulling double shifts, and the families trying to keep their lights on and food on the table as their paychecks grow weaker and weaker. And to those members of Congress who say they stand with workers, this is your moment of truth. You either stand with your constituents or you stand with billionaires who are willing to use to punch a time card. So we're going to continue to stand up and fight back because our jobs, our families, and our future are on the line and at risk. So today I'm calling on every USW member and every working American to pick up the phone and call your member of Congress. Tell them this is a disgrace and a job-killing budget bill. Tell them we won't forget who stood with us and who sold us out. Marcus, I'll turn this back to you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, President McCall. We'll now open it up to Q&A. And first, I want to thank all of our speakers today for your words and for joining us once again. If folks on this call have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Our first question here is from Oren with ABC News, and the question is, when do you expect the bill to start impacting jobs? And I'll pass this one over to you, Secretary Treasurer Noble, and you, President McCall, if you want. Take a stab at answering this one.
Well, we're already seeing employers pull back, developers pull back. Their stranded cost, the uncertainty that this administration and this bill created has already caused a pullback of jobs.
It's exactly what we've experienced as well. And many of our employees who are moving forward in some of the manufacturing opportunities and clean energy and other aspects of the sectors have already walked backwards on some of their commitments because the funding's just not going to be there, or the tax breaks that they expected to get through some of our previous legislation are gone.
Marcus, can I just jump in? I'm going to say something that may seem kind of obvious, but
Absolutely.
just to build on what both President McCall and Secretary Treasurer Noble have said is, as everybody knows, employers have to plan to have the workforce that they need. And one of the things that we saw working in partnership with these great unions under the Biden administration was investments and an industrial policy that would plan to expand jobs in various sectors meant that programs that train workers for jobs were bursting at the seams. Apprenticeship programs were double, triple, quadruple the size. And that's what it means to plan for a future, not just for an economy, but for an individual. And under this administration, even before the bill is passed, right? This is about more than just the bill, but the bill is sort of, in many ways, a nail in the coffin of the disastrous policies of the last 6 months or so. No one is able to plan. And so those programs are by nature going to have to cut back, which means that people also can't plan for their own future. So yes, the impact is being felt already. And by the time they're actually seen in the jobs numbers, it's going to be too late.
Thank you all. The next question is from Elena with Politico for you, Chair Martin. The question is, Priorities USA released a memo this week saying that the majority of Americans weren't aware of the mega bill. 2/3 who self-identified as passive or avoidant news consumers, the kind of low-info voters Dems lost in 2024, said they knew nothing about it. What concrete examples can you point to for how Dems plan to close that information gap?
Yeah, I mean, as we just launched this summer, this Organizing Summer campaign to not only hold Republicans accountable, but to make sure that we get out the news of this disastrous bill that's about to be voted on today, to make sure that people know how it's going to impact their families' lives and, of course, communities far and wide throughout this country. And so, a big part of this is just making sure we meet voters where they're at, right? And that means in non-traditional offline spaces like book clubs and picnics and events and concerts, sporting events, etc. And also meeting them where they're at in these digital spaces. So there's no such thing as a low information consumer anymore. Where people are gathering, particularly in those digital spaces, they're all receiving lots of information. And one of the challenges, of course, for the democratic ecosystem is making sure that we are in those spaces communicating constantly. And part of that is, again, making sure that they understand what exactly is in and isn't in this bill and how it's going to impact their communities, their families' lives, and their state. So we're doing that as we speak. And as I will remind folks, for anyone who wants to participate in that program, they can text SUMMER to 43367, SUMMER to 43367, to engage in this work of actually making sure that people know how devastating this bill is going to be throughout this country.
Great, thank you, Chair. And then we have time for one final question, and that's from Andrew Feinberg. It's July 2025, midterms aren't for another year and a half, and Republicans are betting the president will be able to change the national conversation from the negative effects you're talking about, or blame Democrats or other factors. How do you plan to keep him and his allies from simply reverting to cultural issues to keep voters' attention in the way he did successfully in 2024? Chair Martin, we'll start with you, but everyone else feel free to hop in as well.
Well, I think it's incumbent on all of us on this call, our brothers and sisters in the union movement, other organizations that are going to be impacted, to continue to make sure that we reach out to folks throughout this country and remind folks of the impacts here. And so, it has to be a constant drumbeat. And I think part of what that means is we have to be relentlessly focused on an economic agenda. We can't just talk about, frankly, what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done. We also have to do a better job, as I've talked about before, of giving people a sense of what we stand for and how things would be different if they put Democrats back in office. But let me say right now, this is the most unpopular bill in over a half a century. Most wide majorities of Americans do not support what's in this bill. And as a result, it would be malfeasance of us on our part if we weren't talking about this nonstop over the course of the next year and a half. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to hang this bill around the necks of all of these Republicans who voted for this disastrous bill, because they're voting against their constituents. Let me make it very clear. Every cowardly Republican who clearly refuse to meet with their constituents, who basically have sworn an oath of fealty to Donald Trump and his billionaire friends, have sold their constituents down the river. And we're going to remind every one of those constituents throughout this country that those Republicans who voted for this have voted against them and their families. And that's going to be a constant drumbeat from not only the DNC, but all of our partners and allies over the course of the next year and a half.
I would just add to that for us, our members, and for our working families, we'll continue to talk about workplace issues and how how it works closely with our employment security, our economic security, and our retirement security. And we keep reminding working families and working people in this country that that's what's important to them. They'll understand and they'll see through some of the rhetoric that we hear that is not important to their future.
And we've taken a step further. We actually created a training program called Politics, Activism, and Livelihood. We tell our members all the time, hey, politics matter and elections have consequences. This new PALS training takes it to the next level. We're showing them how the legislation actually impacts them, who supported it, who didn't. We think it's going to be a real game changer and steer away from social values. Look, the simple truth is social values are tied to your zip code, not your political party. You practice them at home, you teach them to your family. Well, we're talking about things, focused on things that impact our livelihood. That's what we're doing going forward.
All right, and with that, we can wrap this up. So thank you so much to all the attendees for joining. Thank you so much to our speakers. It was great to hear from all of you. If anyone has any questions moving forward, please reach out to dncpress@dnc.org. Once again, reach out to dncpress@dnc.org, and we're happy to help you as much as we can. Thanks, everybody.
All right, this is for the admins out there. With Navan, you get the ease of allowing employees to book on their own so they no longer have to chase someone down.
Hello，这里是金牛座的小伙伴们，我们一起来看一下大家在2025年7月的整体运势分别分成上旬、中旬、下旬以及卡牌给到我们的意见和建议，看看能不能够给到我们些什么指引或者灵感金牛座